Roman Empire and the Greek Empire were very, very, Mark says they were very tolerant. The Romans had no problem tolerating any religion. I mean, there were literally hundreds of religions throughout the Roman Empire, throughout the Greek Empire, here in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, by the way, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, was often known as called Little Athens. And the reason it was called Little Athens is, first of all, because it was a center of Greek culture, there to spread that Greek culture. And the other reason was that it had so many temples in it. And these temples, they weren't all to the same God. These were temples. There were so many temples that it resembled Athens, which had so many temples, because they had all these different gods. So they were tolerant of all these different religions. The only thing they were intolerant of was when Paul came along. He didn't just say that you have he didn't preach an unknown God, because God was known to him. Yes. He said you have a statue to an unknown God. They wanted to cover all their bases, because they had statues to all these gods, and they had one statue to an unknown God, right? And Paul said, that's the one I come to tell you about, and his name is Jesus Christ.
It's not going to be unknown to you anymore.
And then they became very intolerant.
Yes.
Because he said that's the only way.
Because the God that we serve is a jealous God. And he says that there's only one God. Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. You've got to serve him and him alone with all of your heart, your strength, your mind, your being, your soul, your everything, to the exclusion of everything else. Right. And therein lies the problem. And when we finally get into this, we're going to see this in Philadelphia. This is probably one of the reasons that they had a problem, the church had a problem, is because they would not play this political game, where the church was intolerant of other gods. Mm-hmm. Now that didn't mean that they went out and tried to bonk everybody over the head that had a different God. But they refused to acknowledge that, okay, your God is a God. Right. See, this is one of the things that was common in the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire. I may serve this God, and you come along and you serve another God. I say, hey, that's fine. That's fine. You know, they're two gods. The church said, no, there's only one God. One God and one God alone. So they were what's known as monotheistic. They only had one God. Whereas they lived in a polytheistic society and culture, where there were many, many gods. So oftentimes the church was seen as pagans.
Because they had only one God. That's the next thing to be an atheist.
Right, because they didn't believe in Apollos. They didn't believe in Thor. They didn't believe, he's not Greek. They didn't believe in Jupiter. They didn't believe in Diana. They didn't believe in Artemis. They didn't believe in all these gods. So people said, well, these people are atheists, because they don't believe. And then the biggest problem came up, because in the time that John was sent to Patmos, the emperor was a man named Domitian. And great persecution took place in his time. And he was literally called in Latin, God, Lord and God. Because remember, it was common practice for Caesars, the emperors of Rome, to be claimed as gods once they died. Once they died, they were considered, they'd been elevated to godhood. Now Caligula changed that a little bit, because Caligula called himself a god while he was still alive.
Now that wanted people to worship him.
Caligula wanted to put a statue of himself up in the temple in Jerusalem.
Right.
Hello, there's a foreshadowing of the Antichrist, right? But then Domitian was called Lord and God. Well, that's not a problem if you've got 100 lords. If you've got 100 gods, what's one more or less? But if you only have one God, and the test of political correctness was to be able to say that Caesar is Lord, the Romans, the Greeks, the Asians, they didn't have a problem doing that. Because what's one more or less? But ask a Jew who is faithful, or a Christian, to say Caesar is Lord, and they would say, he is not. Jesus Christ is Lord. And I proclaim that to the glory of God the Father. Then, all of a sudden, forget about religion. You are now you are a traitor to the empire. So the question became, are you going to deny his name or not? Because if you claim that Caesar is Lord, you have denied that Jesus Christ is. You can't believe. Right?
He is Lord. Beside him there's none other. He is Lord, our great and reigning King. He is Lord. The heavens declare His glory. Let every nation and tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. He's a mighty King, able to deliver. He's our King. Wonderful in all His counsel. He is wonderful. He's excellent in all His working. He is excellent. He's Lord of all and He is worthy. He is Lord of all. For He is Lord.